So, this episode will be on the Black Dragon, the first dragon that we will be covering.
Yes.
So, let's get right into it.
So, all right. You're probably wondering, we know what Black Dragon is a Black Dragon. Well, what if I told you? What happened if you went into this dark dungeon like, I forgot his name.
Sherlock.
No, not Sherlock.
Watson.
Poor Watson. Man, people like to forget his name. Poor Watson, Sometimes in the dark depths you can't see this dragon. It's very hard to identify a dragon.
Just for the YouTube channel, Ethan was referencing our intro, which can be found on every podcast episode. It's a little short.
Oh, yes.
But for podcast listeners, I don't need to tell you that.
Yeah, exactly. So, some good details to know if you're facing against a black dragon. Well, the most identifiable... I probably said that wrong.
Identifiable feature.
Is their face, their head. Some call them skull dragons because of their very large skull-like nostrils and their sunken-in eyes. They also have these two giant horns that protrude outward, kind of like a bull, but instead of going up, they go down, and they can be swirled or, ragged.
Yeah.
Very menacing-looking dragon. It will have frills kind of on its back and running down, kind of like spines, going from its neck to its tail. Actually, very large spines compared to other dragons. It actually, compared to other dragons, it's a very stocky and chubby. Compared to the other ones, it kind of has shorter legs, kind of hunched.
Well, chubby is definitely not a word to describe it, because it's very
kind of alligator-y.
Sure, but so the face is not the only thing on the black dragon that's skull-like. It's a skull. It's called a skull dragon because of that. But in general, it looks like it's got skin that's super thin, because the skin is super thin, and it's tightly wrapped and stretched on top of this dragon's body.
It's kind of like a wetsuit.
Yes, and so what you can see is every single ripple of its muscles, and so it doesn't have this chubby oomph look. Yeah. It's got all these little stringy muscles throughout all over its body, which it looks very strong, but in this very thin, stringy way. And then its head just looks like straight up bone. It's just a skull on top of a dragon, and this is because not only is the skin so thin on its own, they produce acid, and acid is kind of always on them, always running through their veins. So the acid doesn't help. They're slowly kind of just a walking skeleton in a sense.
It's just eating them away, sort of.
Yes, they're immune to acid, which we'll get into, but their appearance very much looks like they've been around acid for a while.
Well, I mean, that makes sense. They're kind of partially acid, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. So basically they're very short compared to other dragons. They got little legs. It's kind of like if you took a wiener dog, that's what they are of the dragons. Not super crazily, but compared to a green dragon, which has super long legs and a super long neck like a swan, black dragons are very short and stocky.
Okay.
Probably chubby was stocky was probably the right word instead of chubby. But yes, that is kind of the basics of a black dragon. Their scales at birth are very glossy black, kind of like obsidian, even though that's a whole separate dragon. But we won't talk about that. But as they age, the black becomes duller. And you can see sometimes if they grow even so old enough, their face will get a gray tint.
Okay.
Like a skull. So it's pretty cool.
That is cool. Yeah. And their skin will get thinner and thinner as they age as well. Which will just make them look even more like a skeleton.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Okay, so that's what they look like. The basics for how they act is really quite simple, and that is they are cruel to the max.
They're sadistic serial killers. They literally,
Yeah,
they're insane.
Yeah, we'll get into how cruel they really are, but let's just say they're very cruel. That's their whole thing.
They're the worst, the most evil of the dragons.
Yep, most evil. It's a good start. Okay, so let's get into their stats.
All right, do you want me to give them the basics?
Sure.
Alrighty. So with a high armor class, so I'm going to give you the stats of a adult black dragon, as that's probably the most you will see. There are 4 stages of a dragon's life. Wormling, which is the baby dragon. which black dragons are not cute as babies, even though every other one is. Sorry. Young dragons, which they're younger, they're kind of like teenagers, so they're a little more moody and sadistic. Adults, which they are adults, they are huge. And then ancient, which are the gargantuan, most rare type or age group of the dragon. And with the new book Fizzbands, there's also the Great Worm.
Yeah.
So there's 5. And there's only one Great Worm black dragon. And he is we'll talk about him later, but yeah, scary. Great Worms will decimate countries and kingdoms, even the world. They're they're bad. So, we'll be talking about the adult. So basically, the older you get, the stronger you get as a dragon.
Most of this episode will be Black Dragon and can be used for pretty much any type of dragon. They're all going to have similarities. The stat block, Adult Dragon is probably the best one to use because it's got all the stuff that a dragon could get. Like a legendary or an ancient dragon doesn't get any more features. They just have better stats on those features. Mm-hmm. So we're going with Adult Dragon.
Yeah, so basically with an armor class of 19, that's a very high armor. Natural armor, very good. A average hit points of 195, which actually isn't high of dragons, but still a lot of health. And they can max out around 250, 270. So okay. Pretty good. Their speed is 40 feet, just walking, flying 80 feet, and swimming 40 feet. So they're masters of land, air, and water. So
true.
It could be hard to escape them. Now I'll get to their base stats. They have a strength of a +6, which is decent, very decent. They have a dexterity of a +2, above average, pretty good. Their con is a +5, which is very good. Their intelligence is a +2. Their wisdom is a +1, and their charisma is a +3. Not the most outstanding stats for dragons.
But still
very good. Very good, yes. Their saving throws that they're good at is a dexterity of +7. Their con is a +10. Their wisdom is a +6, and their charisma is a +8. So don't try to be like charming this dragon. It's probably not going to work. It'll probably just sadistically eat you. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Its skills, they're very good with perception. They get a +11, which is insane. And strength, which they get a +7 with. Stealth, sorry. Yes, they're stealthy dragons.
Yeah, they're black, stealthy, and you can't really sneak up on them. Yeah. And then they're also immune to acid, which makes sense. And they speak Common and Draconic.
Typical.
And their senses are blind sight up to 60 feet. That'll be very relevant. And pretty much all dragons have blind sight. Yeah. That's big until dragons fight and stuff. And then dark vision to 120 feet. And their passive perception is 21. So very high.
Very high.
All right. So I'll get into some of their features here. First one is they're amphibious. So they breathe air and water. So they're as much aquatic as they are on land. And you're pretty much always going to find them around water. That's too much information. I'm going to keep going. They have legendary resistance.
Oh.
So this is, once you get this as a creature, you're looking good in combat. So legendary resistance, 3 times a day. The dragon can, if they fail a check or a saving throw, they can instead choose to succeed it.
I love how it says they can choose. Like, it's just like,
yeah, how about no?
No, thank you.
Yeah. And that's if they fail. So as long as they succeed, they don't even have to use this. And then once they fail, they use it. And they don't, if you look at their other stats, they don't fail too often. Okay. Let's get into their attacks.
Yes.
And more combat-like features. So they have a multi-attack. And this multi-attack consists of 3 things. 1 bite and 2 claws. That's their multi-attack. With the addition of Frightful Presence once they reach to be
Which is a magical ability.
Which
all dragons possess.
And so what I'm saying here is they can do their Frightful Presence in addition to their multi-attacks. They have those 3 attacks, and they can do Frightful Presence all in one turn. That's what they can do. So let's get into what each of those things does. Bite. Simple. Well, actually, not as simple as some other things. Bite does around, on average, 17 damage, so 2d10s plus 6 piercing, plus 4 or 1d8 acid damage.
That's pretty good.
So a little extra acid damage to the bite, probably due to the acidic saliva and drool that they're constantly secreting.
Constantly drooling.
Yeah.
They're always drooling acid.
Yes. Yeah. And that will get in you if they bite you. Claw attack does 13 damage on average, 2d6 is plus 6 slashing damage. And they also have a tail attack, which does 15 or 2d8s plus 6 bludgeoning damage. But that is not included in their multi-attack. All right, so the last thing in their multi-attack is Frightful Presence. So, what Frightful Presence does, and this is something that the dragon gets once they become big enough, once they become an adult dragon. Frightful Presence has a 120-foot radius, and what it does is it makes all creatures that are within that radius and aware of the dragon, the creatures must make a DC 16 Wisdom save. If they fail, they become frightened for 1 minute of this dragon, which is a long time in combat, and that's what it does. And so, if you're frightened, you can't move towards the target. You have to move away,
and you can't attack it.
You definitely cannot attack it. So this can be problematic. And this also can be very fun to describe.
Yes.
But we'll get into that later. So just a little bit more on Frightful Presence. If a creature does fail, they can repeat the save on their turn as an action, I believe. And if they succeed or at any point, whether that be on the initial save or later on, they are then immune to the Frightful Presence for 24 hours. So they've kind of overcome their fear and now they're ready to fight. That's Frightful Presence.
It's very scary to fight dragons.
Yes. Would you like to do the honors on what their breath weapon is?
Oh, yes. Their breath weapon is fire. I'm just kidding. It's acid. Well, no dip. So
it's a black dragon. Nothing about black dragon tells you it's acid. And I think the fact that it is acid makes it way cooler.
That is true.
Just acid is it fits this creature so well, this sadistic, cruel creature. Acid.
Oh, yeah. And acid is the most torturous, really, of all of them. So basically its breath weapon is acid. And the most interesting about it's one of those few dragons that its breath weapon is a line instead of a cone. So it can shoot a 60-foot line straight. So it's kind of like a sniper, I guess.
Yeah, kind of like a super soaker, shooting a stream of liquid, but it's acid.
I kind of imagine have you ever heard of those archer fish? They go to the surface, they shoot that thing of water to knock down bugs.
No. What I do... that sounds cool. I've never heard of that.
Cool. They're real fish, but they're cool. They'll go to the surface and snipe bugs flying by or just on the plants, and they'll eat them when they fall in.
What it does remind me of when I was a kid is in How to Train Your Dragon. There was one that would shoot boiling water. There was a dragon. That reminds me of that.
Yeah. So they actually shoot a stream of pure acid in a 60-foot line. And if anyone is in that 60-foot line, they have to make a DC 18 Dex saving throw or take 12 d8s of damage.
Which is on average 54 damage.
That's a rip. Or if you succeed, you take half damage. So not as deadly as the cone, as the fire or the poison, as that shoots on a cone, because you can hit a lot more people.
Yeah, but if you do get hit by this, for a CR 14 monster, this is a lot of damage. This is big damage.
Yeah, breath weapons of dragons are very powerful.
Yeah.
That's what.
But especially for the black dragon, actually.
Yeah.
The black dragon is a CR 14 because they have a pretty low hit pool.
Yes.
Or hit point pool, but they deal actually more damage. They have a hit point pool of a CR 9 creature, but this damage bumps them up to CR 14 because this is serious damage. Whenever they use this attack, it's gonna be at least 22 damage, or around whatever 54, not 22, 26 or something. Yeah, the breath. Whenever they shoot the breath, it's going to be an instant 20-something damage because.
That's true.
And then if the person fails, it's 54 damage. I mean, that's going to knock someone down pretty quick.
Yes, but luckily it's not a cone where it can hit the whole party in one shot.
True.
So it's more like a sniper. I kind of imagine he just puts his little tongue out. He just shoots as we did as kids. We shot at our parents with water. You never done that? You put water in your mouth. You Can you shoot water?
No, I haven't.
No.
But yeah, we'll get into how they use their breath weapon. But
yes.
That's all their abilities on a base level. But once they reach adult size, they now have legendary actions.
Oh boy.
And so these are the legendary actions. They have 3. The first one, detect. So that's simply they can make a perception check as this action.
Rogues.
Yes. And we've already gone over what legendary actions, how they work, but just because we've only done it once, briefly, legendary actions are done after an other creature's turn. So this dragon...
At any time.
As long as it's at the end of another creature's turn. So if the dragon does a full turn, and then Barbarian Dude goes, the dragon can then jump in again and do a legendary action. And so on and so forth. Typically, you can't do the same one twice in a row, is what I believe. Well, you can't do any of them, actually.
He can do 3 of them. He has 3 slots.
Oh, that's layer actions.
That's layer actions.
That's layer actions. Okay.
So, legendary actions, you have like 3 little pool costs. You cost 3. So imagine like 3 tokens every round.
Yep.
Yeah, so basically one of the tokens, or one of the things he can choose from is detect. He can just do a perception check randomly to see if any rogues are trying to do a stealth attack on him, or to try to find if someone's hiding.
Yeah, we'll talk about what they're used for, but let's just get through this.
Other one is a tail attack. We already talked about its damage.
Yeah, so it's just to make a tail attack.
So to hit people behind him.
Okay, yes.
And then the special one, unique to dragons, is the wing attack. Do you want to talk about the wing attacks?
Sure. This is the last thing on the stat block. So this is the third legendary action they have, and it requires 2 of the legendary actions to do. But when they do it, this is what happens. Creatures, basically their wings like expand and they start flapping them really hard, and they start to kind of rise into the air. And what this causes is creatures within 10 feet of them have to make a DC 19 dex save, or take 13 on average, or 2d6 plus 6 bludgeoning damage, and get knocked prone. And then, so this is like the wind gust of their wings beating, and so the creatures will get knocked down and like hit their head or something on the ground. And then when the dragon does this, the dragon can also choose to rise up into the air up at least half of its speed. So in this case, it'd be 20 feet. Or flying, it would actually be 40 feet. So I'm not really sure which one it would be. I guess flying. That's hard to say. I'm not sure. Like, would they be able to go 40 feet up or 20 feet?
It should be only half of their speed.
Yeah, but speed what? Walking or flying?
It's flying.
Flying. Okay, so they can go 40 feet in the air when they do this ability.
Yes, I just imagine they just like dart backwards. Like they kind of stand up. They kind of like walk backwards as they're beating their wings.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, and that is their stat block.
Very big stat block.
So we're going to get into what all of those pieces contribute to everything they do.